Good morning. Thank you everyone for joining us today for the UH Library Zotero workshop. My name is Kristen Connors and I'm from Graduate Division. I'll be your moderator and technical support for this webinar. So before we dive into the content of today's Zotero workshop, I'd like to draw everyone's attention to our land acknowledgement that you should see up. Okay, so we would like to acknowledge the Aina on which we gather today, recognizing Hawaii as an indigenous space whose original people are today identified as Native Hawaiians. The University of Hawaii at Manoa is physically located in the Ahupua'a of Waikiki, in the Moku of Kona, and the Mokopuni of Oahu, in the Pai'ana of Hawaii. We are grateful and privileged for the opportunity to honor those who came before us and their knowledge systems that shaped Hawaii in sustainable ways, allowing us to enjoy these gifts today. Let us collectively engage in the kuleana of becoming a Native Hawaiian place of learning, grounded in aloha aina. Okay, thank you for allowing me to share that. So today we are joined by two guests at the UH Manoa Library, and they are going to be helping you to better learn and understand Zotero, a free bibliographic management system. We are going to, again, this is a hands-on workshop, so you should have all received the link with the handout. If you did not, I'm going to go ahead and post that in the chat box again right now. Again, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box, not the chat box, because that has been disabled. I'd now like to turn things over to one of our first facilitators from Hamilton Library, Brian Richardson, and he'll just take it from there. Brian?
Aloha, thanks, Kristen. So I'd like to introduce Sarah Nakashima. She is my colleague at the library. She'll also be handling the technical issues. And so if you have any questions of a technical nature while we're going through, or any questions, I suppose, as we're going through, please put them in the Q&A box and she'll try and help, and Kristen will try and help as well. And I'm just more or less going to keep talking, though Sarah and Kristen will interrupt me if there's something that I should be covering, or if I accidentally turn my mic off or something like that. So let me share my screen here. Go. Okay. Okay, so welcome to the virtual library in a way, or yes, whatever you want to say, you're welcome to. What we're going to do today, and it'll probably take about an hour and a half or so. We'll see, depends on the questions and so on, but we're going to go through Zotero, which, as Kristen said, is a bibliographic management program. And what that means is that it helps you manage your bibliographies, which is kind of obvious. It's also sort of a library program, not library like Hamilton Library, but library like file management library, where it helps you keep track of your academic articles and your web pages that you want to add to your scholarship and so on. And so it really helps you manage the information or the text or whatever that really form the basis of your scholarship. And one of the things to recognize about Zotero, or about bibliographic management programs in general, like EndNote and Mendeley would be two others, is that it's not like a one class kind of program. It's the kind of thing that you're going to be using ideally for your entire time at the university and beyond, right? Because it's, again, kind of a file management research kind of program, as you'll hopefully see. And so let's get started. And I'm going to go through the handout more or less linearly. Yeah, and we'll just see what questions. Then every once in a while, I'll stop and give you like 5 minutes to play as well. And that'll give me a time to help answer some of the technical questions. So Zotero, there are 3 things that you need to have in order to say that you have Zotero installed properly. Right? One of them is the actual program. So here is the Zotero program. I'll get into the interface in a little bit, but it's a standalone program. It's free from Zotero.org, and it should be installed on your computer or multiple computers if you want to share your share your account. Big thing is that it always has to be running in the background. If you're going to be using Zotero in Word or your browser, Zotero itself has to be running. And that's one of the common mistakes that people will do is they'll try and do something in Firefox and it'll say can't do it. And it's because Zotero's not running. So, okay, that's the first thing you need to do. The second thing you need to have be able to see is in Microsoft Word, assuming you're doing Microsoft Word, you need to be able to see the Zotero tab up here. And if you click on that, you'll see that it's, there are two main things you can do with Zotero. You can add a citation and you can add a bibliography. I'm not going to do notes, and these little buttons here are useful, but yeah, they're not the main feature. The main features are really adding citations and bibliographies. Then the third thing you can do, or you need to have in order to say that you have Zotero installed, is in your browser. And I'm using Firefox. It works with Chrome. And also, I think works with Edge. It does not work with Safari, unfortunately. The security settings in Safari don't play well with Zotero. But this is Firefox. And up here, what you should find is that there should be a little icon that's the Zotero icon. Now, one point of confusion here is that the image, the icon here changes depending on what you're looking at. It's actually a really good feature because it gives you a sense of what Zotero thinks it's seeing, but it's also a little confusing. So what you need to do is just memorize where the icon is. Mine is over a few. It's going to change depending on how many other extensions you have added and so on. But just figure out where it is. Okay, but that's the third thing you need to have. So really, there are two installations you need to do. The first one is the program, which also then installs the Microsoft Word extension. And then the second installation is the browser connector. If you use multiple browsers, you have to download multiple connectors. So if I was using Chrome, I'd also have to go to Chrome and then download the connector for Chrome, which I think I did, but I'm going to focus on Firefox here, just out of convenience more than anything. Okay, so those are the three things. Now, in Zotero, there are basically three parts of the interface. On the left side, which is these folders here, and I'll complain about the fact that they're folders later, but on the left side, there are these folders that are essentially ways of organizing your material into different clusters of references and so on. That's the collection panel. The middle one is the list of all of my material. Now, right now I've got my library selected, so that gives me the complete list of all of my material. If I click on a particular one, it's going to give me the list of the items that I've added to that particular collection. So I get a sub list. This works kind of like a file window. I can organize them in various ways. I can click on the year and I can organize it by year. If I click on it a second time, it'll invert it and make it from the earliest to the latest. Typically, what you're going to do is the date added. And the reason for that is that generally you're not going to, it doesn't really matter whether things are alphabetical or not. I mean, maybe if you want to try and find it while you're browsing, but what's more important is to focus on the most recent stuff that you've added, because that's the stuff that you need to read, that you need to work on, correct, and so on and so forth. And so typically what people will do is they will have things organized by the date added. Do whatever you want, right? Whatever works for you. And also, actually, if you do a control click here, so I did on a Macintosh, if you hold the control key down and then you click on the header along the top, it'll give you a list of some of the other columns that you want, or that you might want to look at or not look at. And you can turn those off and on as you wish. On the PC, what you do is you do a right click. So same thing, and this is generally the case, that any time that a Windows computer allows you to do a right click, do a control click on the Mac and you'll get these contextual menus, they're called. Zotero's quite good with contextual menus. So anytime that you wonder what you can do with something, just do a control click and see what comes up. And I don't have a lot there, but I've got some. Okay. All right, so that's the middle bit. Incidentally, you can also search. So up here, I can do a search for Hobbes, for instance, right? Now, I'm not finding anything because I'm limited to my to that collection. But if I go to my library and I do a search for Hobbes, then I'll have a bunch of them. I can also search different at different levels, I guess. If I click on here, I can search simply title, creator, year, creator being author, right? So you can see here how Hobbes shows up in the author and the title and so on. I can search fields and tags. That's going to include things like publishers, my notes, and things like that. And I can also search everything. Now, what everything does is it actually looks in the PDFs themselves. If you've got PDFs uploaded that are text-based, and so you can do a search within PDFs. One limitation there is I think it's limited to a certain number of characters that it indexes in the PDF. So it's whatever. Let's say it's 50,000 characters, and so that works fine for academic articles. If you've uploaded a 500-page book, it's probably only going to do the first chunk of the book, but still useful feature. All right, let's get rid of that. All right, and then the third panel is this panel over here. So if I click on that, what I get is all of the details of that particular reference. And you can see it's the title, the author, the type of item, the issue, the pages, whatever, right? And depending on what the item is, I'll get different fields. Now, here's the one big thing that I'll repeat multiple times here is when you're dealing with your references, if you ever see something wrong, fix it. And the way you fix it is you just click on it, and then you type in what the correct thing is. And the reason you want to do that is, well, first of all, that that the data isn't always accurate, right? But the more accurate your data is, the better your references are going to be, the better your citations are going to be. And again, because this is something that you're going to be working with hopefully for years to come, if you fix something now, it means that that error won't show up 2 years from now when you're not paying attention, right? So yeah, so anything that you see wrong here, just fix it on this side. Okay, so those are the 3 panels. The other thing about Zotero is that there are really 3 stages to using Zotero. The first is to get stuff into Zotero, and I'll talk about some of the strategies there. The second stage is to do stuff with the stuff in Zotero. I'm using the word stuff too much. And then the other is to actually get stuff out of Zotero into Microsoft Word or into a bibliography of one kind or another, right? So that's the 3 stages: how to get stuff in, how to do stuff with it, and then how to get it out again. All right, so what I'm going to do, and this is, we're moving on to page 2 here, is it is really just different ways of getting the material into Zotero. And a lot of it depends on, can you find the information somewhere else? And that's often going to be the library catalog. It might be WorldCat, it might be something else, but the general idea is that if you can find the information somewhere else, then you don't have to type it in, right? And so, but let's do the first stage, which is you having to type things in. And there are times when that needs to happen. If you, for instance, are referencing an interview that you've done, or an email that you've received, or some archival document that hasn't been cataloged already, it's up to you to enter the material. This is the least favored strategy, just because unless you're a great typist, it's going to take longer. You'll probably make mistakes because people don't type anymore, and so on and so forth. But you still have to do it sometimes. And the way you do it is you click on this green button up here that says New Item, and then you tell Zotero what type of item it is. So let's say that it's an interview. Okay. And then on the right side, notice I get all of the fields that are appropriate for an interview. I'll say with my cat Stella. Yeah, sorry, typing's off. She does not have a last name, so I will just call her Stella. All right, and on and on and on, right? Now, one of the things to note about Zotero is that it is not a substitute for your style guide, right? So for instance, in this case, what do you call an interview? Well, I just sort of made up something here, but there are probably rules. If you're using APA or MLA or Chicago or whatever, there are probably rules about what you call an interview. And so you need to look that up. Zotero's not going to tell you, oh, this is how you title something in APA. And so Zotero helps you with your references, but it's not a replacement for your style guide. The style guide still is sort of central to the whole process there. Okay, so notice now that it shows up here on the list. It's also at the top because I just added it, so it's the most recent. There's no year here. Let me just add it. I'll just add 2022 and see what happens. Okay. So that's how you enter something manually, right? Again, not the best typically, because it's prone to error and so on. So the idea then is it's better if you can find the material somewhere else, some information, right? So here's another one. This is the second way. And again, this isn't often used because there are better ways of finding this stuff. But if you're doing either a book or, well, a book that's been published since like 1980, or an academic article that's been published, I think in the last, like, let's say 15 years, 20 years or so, what they have is an identification number. Now, in the case of books, they're called ISBNs, right? So let me go here. So I found a book, Renaissance Self-Fashioning from Moore to Shakespeare. If any of you are Shakespeare fans, this is a book, right? And if I scroll down, you'll see that there's an ISBN. There are actually two ISBNs because the first ISBN system was created, I think, in the 70s or 80s, and they just ran out of numbers. It was a 10-digit one. So they created a 13-digit one. So that's why you've got the 978 version. They both will work. It doesn't really matter. Incidentally, ISBN stands for International Standard Book Number. It's one of these international standards organizations. And again, pretty much every book has a unique ISBN, every edition of a book, I should say. So let's copy that. I could just type it as well. Then if I go to Zotero, I click on this little magic wand thing here, and then here I can enter various identification numbers. So the ISBN, DOI, by the way, is for academic articles, and it stands for Digital Object Identifier. And you'll find them, they're much weirder. They're not just numbers, there's letters and slashes and things like that. But most academic articles will have a DOI, again, if they've been published in the last 10 or 15 years. But okay, I just paste my ISBN there. I hit return, and then what Zotero does is it goes out to an online database. I think it goes to WorldCat, and then it just brings back all of the information. So there's the title, the author, and the place of publication, and so on and so forth. So I really didn't have to type much of anything. And chances are this is fairly accurate because this has been created by WorldCat or by some standardized database. Again, same with DOIs. Now, typically though, like this is potentially useful, but it's not as useful as you might think initially because there are better ways, not better ways, but there are faster ways of finding book ISBNs. Like if you did a search in Amazon, you could just download the information, or if you're on the library page, you can download the information just with a click of a button. So those are fast too, but if all you've got is an ISBN, this is a way of doing it. And the thing with the DOIs, with the digital object identifiers, is chances are you don't just want the reference, you also want the PDF. And so again, it's better probably in most scenarios if you go and download the PDF and then bring it into Zotero, because then you not only get the reference information, you also get the PDF in Zotero. We'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, so that's the second way. The third way, there we go. The third way is if you have an article, a PDF already on your computer. Now, this only really works for academic articles, and it only works for more recent ones. And it also only works if the article is actually text-based rather than just a scan of the article. But like, here's an example here. So this is, yeah, it's an article on the ritual of capital punishment. This, by the way, is the DOI here. So you can see how much more complicated it is. It works though. I mean, it's a great system. It's just, you're not going to memorize that very, very well. But this is an example of what Zotero does well, because it does articles, academic articles well. All right, but if I've already got it on my computer, like say I've already downloaded it, or someone emails it to me, or I get it through the interlibrary loan service, all I need to do is I need to be able to see the file, and I need to be able to see my list here. And then what I do is I drag it over. Now, this is the crucial thing though. I have to let go when there's that horizontal line. Hopefully you can see that horizontal line right there. It's kind of light, but it works. If I let go now, what it does is it copies the PDF over. Hopefully. There we go. And then because it's a new article, it extracts the information. And so now what I get is there's the article, there's all the information that it's taken from the PDF. And then also notice the little triangle here. on the left. If I click on that, then it gives me the PDF. So then I can double click on that and it opens the PDF. So that article now has become part of my Zotero library. That's an ideal scenario. Here's one that doesn't work as well. So this is whatever, I forget what pages, but it's it's a section taken from Pukui and Elbert's Hawaiian Grammar. This is just a photocopy. You can see it's not very good and so on, but it's also not the complete book. It's just a few pages, right? And this, you'll often find that this is something you want to include as well. So what happens is if I drag this over and I wait for the horizontal line and I let go, it'll copy it over, right? You can see that the PDF is there, but it hasn't extracted any information. And that's because it has no idea what this is. This is just a file for Zotero. And so what I need to do is, well, there are a couple of things. One is I could enter the ISBN and so on. In this case, I'll show you a different way, which is if I do a control click or a right click on the PDF, I can create a parent item. Now, this is one of the things that happens in Zotero is they've got this whole parent-child vocabulary going on. So this, like if I click on this level, this is what's called parent metadata. So it's kind of, it's above, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what other metaphor to use, but basically it's the parent information. And then inside are child files. And so in this case, there's a PDF. I'm going to show you how to do notes in a bit as well. Yeah, and so when I do the control click on here and create parent item, what it's doing is, now it's asking me, okay, what is this? I could actually put the ISBN of the book there if I wanted to, or I could just do manual entry. So now notice that this has kind of changed. If I click on the click on the triangle, there's the actual PDF, there's the parent metadata. So now I would have to go in, oops, and I could put Pukui, and I might just do Hawaiian Grammar and whatever else, right? I mean, I would obviously want to do that more comprehensively, but what it did was it gave me the parent metadata level so that I could enter the information. So yeah, I mean, when Zotero works well, like with academic articles, it works very effectively. When you give it other things, you have to do more manual entry and things like that. Okay, and the other thing is, if I move this over, I'll do this one, it doesn't really matter. If I move this over now, if I don't put it, like, let's say that I wanted to add this PDF into my email transcript, that I have had with my cat. Notice again, if there's a horizontal line, it's going to create a new reference. But if I'm hovering over an existing parent metadata entry and I let go, all it does is copy the file over, right? So now the PDF is there, but I don't get all of the metadata stuff. I've just added a file to that particular reference. Typically not that useful, but it could be, right? Because say, for instance, if you had an interview with somebody and you wanted to put a picture of them so that you could recognize them or whatever, if you've got a file on your computer, just drag it over and put it into that entry, and then you'll have the file there, right? So there are scenarios where it makes sense to add files. Most of the time, though, you're going to drag PDFs over and then have Zotero extract the information. All right, we have two more, and then I'm going to give you a few minutes to talk about it. Notice one of the things about this is that I still, like with all three of these, like with the ritual of capital punishment as well, the file is still here, right? And that's one of the things to recognize with Zotero is you're not moving, and this is sort of technical, but you're not moving the file into Zotero, you're adding it to Zotero, and it still exists in the outside world. Now, I could delete this one now, and I would still have it in Zotero, and that's up to you. Or I could archive it somewhere or something like that. But yeah, it does create a copy, not the original, right? Or it doesn't put in the original. So yeah, so you end up having two versions of it. Okay. The other thing to note following up on that is that somewhere in the recesses of your computer, there is a folder that Zotero is using to store these things. It's not useful to you in the outside world. Like what it ends up giving it are random letters and numbers and so on. So like I wouldn't find something like the ritual capital punishment somewhere in the Zotero file structure, it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be unintelligible to me. So once it's in Zotero, you sort of have to access it through Zotero. It still does exist as a PDF. It's just the naming conventions are such that it's something else, right? So when also, which leads to another thing, is if you're backing up Zotero, and I would encourage you to do so, if you're backing up your whole computer, Zotero will be backed up as well. All right. Okay, so with that, let's go on to the fourth one, which is a website. So Zotero does existing PDFs fairly well. It does journal articles very well, typically. It does not do web pages very well. And it's not Zotero's fault in a way, right? I mean, the problem is, and here's, we'll do the BBC. The problem is that it's really hard, if you look at website design, that things like when was it published, when was it created, who wrote it, and so on and so forth. A lot of times on websites, that information is just not available, right? You don't get the standardization that you get with academic articles, for instance. And so when Zotero adds a website to, or when you add something to a Zotero database, typically there's mistakes. You need to fix stuff. Now, it is better, and this is why I'm at BBC, it is better for news organizations and things like that. Like, so where there's a standard format and so on and so forth. Zotero is usually way better at organizing titles and authors and things. So let me pick an article here. I should have tested this one first, sorry, but let's see here. Okay, well, this should work. Notice, no, okay, no, so this has an author, so this will be a good example. So there's my Zotero icon. What I do is I click on it. Let me wait a second here. Notice it is downloading a snapshot. I'll talk about that in a second. But once it's, yeah, it's grayed out. Okay, so there we go. So I go to Zotero now, and there's my reference, right? So it's got the title. It actually found the author, which is kind of cool. A lot of newspaper articles don't have authors. So the author ultimately would become, in this case, the BBC. But yeah, in this case, it found it. So I've got the title, the author, an abstract, when it was accessed. There's no publication date. Well, it's got a date added, but that's when I added it here, right? So September 16th. Oh, maybe that does show up there, right? Because it's today's. So, okay. So it's given me actually decent information. Typically, again, I'd have to go back and fix it. Now, one of the good things about Zotero, first of all, is that it tells me when I accessed it. And that's important because when you access, or when you're doing your bibliography, you have to, you have to say when you accessed it, not just when it was created or what it's like now, but when you accessed it. Because part of the problem is that websites change over time. And so if you're making an argument based on what a website said 2 weeks ago, when you go back, maybe they've changed it on you, right? And so it's harder to keep track of what you're referencing. So yeah, getting the date accessed is important. The other good thing I think with Zotero is, notice that we've got the little triangle there. And there's a snapshot. And so what Zotero has done is actually downloaded the web page as a local file or set of files on my computer. So if I double click on this, notice that it's running Safari. So it's even a different browser. But here's the article, right? But if you look up at the URL here, it's actually a file on the Zotero storage area. So I now have a local file of what that website looked like today. And so if I come back 2 weeks from now, if the website itself has changed, I can see what I saw back then. There are a couple limitations. Sometimes it just doesn't work very well at all. With the BBC, there are a couple limitations. One of them I think we can see in this large white box here, which is that it does not download videos. It also often doesn't download advertising and things like that. So if you're studying advertising, you might have to do screenshots or something like that. But notice that it, we got most of the items here. It didn't finish downloading, but that's okay, because I mean, that's not the article we wanted anyway. The other thing that sometimes happens, though this doesn't seem to be the case here, is that the images get degraded in various ways, and this is for copyright reasons. And so if you do a screenshot or a save, not a screenshot, but if you save a website, sometimes the pictures will be fuzzy. So if you need clean or clear pictures, take a screenshot or save it some other way. I mean, there are various strategies for doing that. I won't get into. But yeah, just realize that if you're doing the snapshot that Zotero creates, it may not be perfectly accurate, but most of the time you get the main stuff. Okay. So I'll do one more, which is the journal databases, and then I'll give you 5 minutes to play. And what I'm going to want you to do is download, 5 or 6 references. You can always delete them later. Don't worry about that. But that'll give you something to play with then when we start working with the material on page 3. So let's go to journal articles here. Let me quit Safari. Okay, so I don't know if you've taken a library basics, sort of how to find stuff in the library. We're doing one next week, I think, if you're interested. This is the main library page. What we do is we want to look for something. Sarah, what are you looking for these days? I came up with squirrels last time, and that was really hard to type. Okay, let's do blue whales. And actually, what I should have done, which I will do in a second here, well, I won't bother. If I'm looking for blue whales, I should have put it in quotation marks, but that's not relevant here. Okay, so I want to look for peer-reviewed journal articles. Well, let me just show you a book, right? So here's a book. So I click on the main record there. Notice up here that Zotero has become this blue box, kind of what it's supposed to be a book. If you're into Doctor Who, it could be the TARDIS, but anyway, if I click on that, what it does is it saves the reference, right? And so now when I go to Zotero, there's my blue whales reference. No triangle here. There's no book. It's just the reference, right? And this one is not a good one. The place of identification or place of publication not identified. I'd have to do some work on this one to fix it, but oh yeah, see, we actually have place of publication not identified. So that one, yeah, you'd have to deal with that on your own. But let's do an article. Okay, so here's one on military sonar. If I click on this, again, this is the main record. Now, if I click on the Zotero here, I would just get the reference like I did with the book. And this is what ends up getting more complicated in a way, because I don't just want the book, I want the article, right? And so what I do, oh, okay, wait, I'm going to go back because I want to find a simple one first. Okay, there we go. Jstor will work. So I click on Jstor and I have to log in. So here's Jstor. Now Jstor is actually, it poses a really annoying particular quirk here, which I'll show you. So what I'm seeing, or what I will see in a second, is the PDF, right? And I see the metadata on the right side and so on and so forth. Now, most of the time, all I would need to do is click on the Save to Zotero, and it's going to download the reference as well as the PDF. You will notice here, though, that the PDF fails. And this is the annoying quirk with really just with Jstor, which is if I click download here, I have to accept the terms and conditions. And that's why it failed the first time, right? So if I accept and download, it's going to show me the PDF. And notice now that the Zotero icon is changed to a PDF. So if I click on that, didn't work again. Why didn't it work? Well, okay, instead of Jstor, let's do Wiley. Librarians have to be eternally optimistic in these sorts of things. And yeah, if one vendor doesn't work, try another one. So you can see here again, I've got the abstract, at least I've got a PDF button here. And this is going to change from vendor to vendor. Often what I'm able to do is, even though I'm not looking at the PDF because I've logged in, I can click on the Zotero icon. And what it will do is it will download the PDF, or it'll download the reference as well as the PDF. And you can see that this succeeded because it didn't give me the little X there. So now when I go to Zotero, now I've got 2 of them. Don't worry about duplicates. I'll show you how to get rid of those later. But yeah, so I've got the one without the PDF, but then if I click on this one, click on the little triangle, there's the actual PDF. So I've added that article to my to my Zotero database within a few seconds, right? And this is one of the great things about Zotero is you approach it like an Easter egg hunt, I suppose, or something like that, where the idea is to go out, find the stuff, bring it into Zotero, and then work on it, right? And again, I can go through and find all sorts of stuff, and just bring it into Zotero for future work. But that's how most that's how most references work. Now, let me just show you the one that I thought might be more problematic, just in case I can figure it out here. It was this one, right? And the only reason I backtracked out of this one was because it was from a vendor I didn't really know. I knew Jstor would fail, and I was pretty sure that Wiley would work. But so here's an example again, same. This, by the way, is the publisher website. This is not our website. But again, if I want this, I've got two options really to try. One is I can go up here and click on it and just see if it downloads the PDF. So that did, which is good. If that didn't work, what I would do is I would click on the PDF button here. And depending on how your computer's set up, it might actually just save it to your computer, in which case you can drag it over. But in this case, it shows me the PDF, and then I can click on the PDF, and then I've downloaded it. So again, depending on the vendor, different strategies, but the same basic goal, which is to download the PDF as well as the parent metadata file. Okay, so with all of that in mind, what I want you to do, and I'll give you 5 minutes or so, is, and I'll check in just to see, I'll check in to see how you're doing, but essentially, go through and just practice finding a few. Go to the article and go to the article database and find some articles, go to websites, see if those work. You don't have to type, the ISBN one probably is less important. And if you don't have an existing PDF, don't worry, you can do that one later. But yeah, whatever works. Okay, so I'll give you 5 minutes and then see if you have any questions as well.
Thank you, Brian. So we have been getting a lot of questions. Sarah's been trying to troubleshoot with connector questions and it not showing up in Word. So I'll leave the technical questions for Sarah to handle via the Q&A. But we have also been receiving a lot of questions about storage and duplicates. So just to clarify again, once you add a document or an item to Zotero, can you delete it off your computer, or does it need to stay in both places?
You can delete it off your computer. Once you see the file in the Zotero list, then you can delete it from your computer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And do you recommend saving things somewhere else as a backup in case Zotero fails?
I'll get to that actually near the end.
Okay.
Because, yeah, if you sign up for a Zotero account, you can then back up your Zotero database to the Zotero server, depending on how large your library is, because there is a cost involved if it goes beyond, well, I forget, they gave you 20 megabytes or something of storage, which if you're storing your PDFs, that gets eaten up pretty quickly. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And then what about space on your computer? So when you do, and I think that kind of relates to what you're going to talk about in the future. So when you do save things on Zotero on your computer, is that taking up space then?
Yeah.
On your computer? Okay.
Yeah. It ends up just being files on your computer. Yeah.
Okay.
That you don't really access directly, right? You typically access it through Zotero, through the Zotero interface.
Okay, got it. Any other questions, Sarah, that you saw that I missed on the storage part? I know there was another question about, when an article doesn't have a name, what do you do? No, okay. So then to that question, right, if you find an article or something from the news that you're trying to add on, but there is no author, what should you do in that situation?
See, part of that is that I think, the answer is going to come from your style guide. Because it may be that MLA and APA and Chicago or whatever deal with it differently. Because that is one of the scenarios that they will go through is an authorless article, right? And typically, my understanding is at least with newspaper articles, what ends up happening is that the institution itself becomes the author. And so if it's a BBC article with no author, then the author is the BBC, right? Yeah, so that's generally how it works, but again, defer to your style guide, because that's going to determine what's right and wrong in terms of how you approach this.
Got it. Okay. And then I see Sarah's answering one of these questions as well, but I'll ask it. So if you want to download a PDF from a Google Drive, for example, and add it to Zotero, would that work?
Yep. It's just a file. Yeah. I mean, the big question there is whether the file has the information Zotero needs to extract the bibliographic information, right? So like, if I sent you a paper I wrote that hasn't been published and you put it into Zotero, it's not going to have any idea what to put in the data, right? So you'd have to do that manually. But yeah, like if there's a Google Drive that has a PDF and you just copy the PDF onto your computer and then drag it over to Zotero, that should work fine if it's a normally structured article, I guess.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I think those are all the questions for now. Again, if you're having an issue with it, accessing it through your Word or Google Doc, or the connector issue, Sarah, it will help troubleshoot with you directly. So.
And let me show you the Word one, only because some of you may be having this issue, and it's I know some of you are, but yeah, more of you might be. So sometimes when you install Zotero, the connector to Word doesn't take for some reason, and I don't know why. It seems pretty random. But the way you solve that is if you go to Zotero and you go to the preferences. Now on the Mac, it's under the Zotero menu. Under Windows, I think it's under the edit menu, right? You go to preferences, and then with these buttons on the top here, you go to the Cite button, which allows you to specify styles and things like that. But there's also a word processor tab. And if you click on that, you can click on the reinstall Microsoft Word add-in, and then that should work. There is one weird variation, which is becoming less and less common. I mean, I haven't seen it in a couple of years actually, but if you have an older version of Word on the Mac, what you end up getting is, let me go to Word here, is instead of a tab here, you get a little squiggly S up on the menu, and that gives you access to the Zotero stuff. But that's that's probably like a 10 about a 10-year-old version. Yeah, we'll talk about Zotero or about Word in a bit. Yeah, sorry, I just saw that and I see Sarah's typing. Yeah. Okay. Does anyone want more time trying stuff? Oh, okay. Actually, the anonymous, the Chrome one, I'll take. This is another weird issue, and I don't know why it's happening. But basically, what's happening is that, or what the solution, I don't know why it's happening, is when you're in Chrome, log out of your UH account. Not just close the windows, but you have to go sign out from your UH email or whatever, probably your email is what you're signed in. So you log out, then you install the connector, and then you can log back in again and everything's fine. So I have no idea why that happens. But yeah, the trick there is explicitly log out of your UH account and then install stuff and then just log back in. So hopefully that works. Okay, so the directly from Google Drive, I mean, it should work. So if I don't have Google Drive set up here as well, but like if I go to my downloads, what I would do, let me get Zotero up here. Again, I need to be able to see my downloads, is I take this, which is a book, and I drag it over and I just make sure that I've got that horizontal line there, and then I let go. And then what it will try and do is download and extract the information. So in this case, it's this book that I downloaded from Hati Trust. So let's how about this? If that continues as a problem, let me know and we can zoom later, because it might be good if I'm seeing what's going on your screen. Yeah, and it might be that Google Docs works differently. I don't know. Okay, let's start again. Not start again, but let's talk about working with your references. And again, at the end of the presentation, there'll be time to troubleshoot some of these things as well. So now that I've got stuff in, and again, if I was doing real research, I would have brought in probably a lot of stuff as the stuff that I found that could be relevant. There are various things that you can do with the material in Zotero that's useful for your research. The first step, and this is the top of page 3, the first step is to get rid of duplicates. Now, because one of the things, if you're doing multiple searches, you're downloading whatever you want, you don't need to, or you shouldn't have to worry about whether you've already downloaded something or not, because that just takes up time and it's distracting and so on. And so what I would do is just download it a second time. And then what you do is in Zotero, on the left side here, you'll see a button that says duplicate items. I click on that. What it gives me are the duplicate items in my library. I've got a bunch of them. You can see some of them I've already downloaded. But say, for instance, this one, right? So I downloaded the behavioral responses article twice. If I click on it, it selects both of them. And then I click on the merge 2 items, and then it's gone. It's not gone from my library, but it's gone from the duplicate list. Same thing here with prey-mediated behavior, merge 2 items, and then it's gone. And then I can do the capital punishment one as well, and so on and so forth. Right. And ideally, what you would do is you'd go through and delete all of the duplicates or remove the duplicates by merging them. Okay, but that's an important, useful first step, because then you're not dealing with multiple instances of a particular article. All right. The second thing to do, let me go back to my library. The second thing is to correct information. Just have a look and see if it's missing anything, if something seems spelled wrong or whatever, right? That's going to be an ongoing task, but now's a good time to do it as well. The third one is this is a picky sort of technical one, but it's really important, especially with using Zotero in the long term. And that is that there are, well, actually, okay. You'll notice here, there. So behavioral responses, notice that the name of the name of the PDF is just full text PDF. Not that informative, especially if I've downloaded like 20 articles from the same vendor, they're all going to be called full text PDF. Instead, what I want to do, and this again just becomes way more convenient over time, is I want to rename it. To something more meaningful. And the way you do that is you do a control click or a right click if you're on a PC, and you select this rename file from parent metadata. And then what that's going to do is it's going to take the generic full text PDF and then instead put author, last name, year, and the beginning of the title. Right. And you can see how, again, if you had like 20 of these, if you rename the titles, it just becomes way more useful, right? Way more meaningful than them all having the same name. And I would do this every time you're done searching on a particular time, just go through and fix those. It goes very quickly because, again, the control click or the right click, and you can just zoom down the list. Now this fourth one, again, this is the top of page 3, is technical, but very important to realize, which is that there are 2 ways of capitalizing titles. And it depends on your style, which one you use. The first one is what's called sentence capitalization. And this one is an example of sentence capitalization in the sense that the first letter is capitalized, the first letter of the title, and then every proper name is capitalized. So in this case, behavioral is capitalized plus Belanthera, whatever that is, because that's a proper name, right? You can see here, like the Renaissance self-fashioning, same thing. Renaissance, Moore, and Shakespeare are capitalized because those are proper names, and one is the first name, right? So that's what's called sentence capitalization. The other system is what's called title capitalization, and give an example of that. Here, everything is miscellaneous, the power of the new digital disorder. This is an example of title capitalization because you can see here that basically every major word is capitalized, right? So everything, I don't know why is capitalized. I don't think that should be the case, but everything, miscellaneous, power, new digital disorder. So they're not proper names. Those are just words, right? But that's what a title capitalization system does. Different styles use different systems. And the problem is that Zotero cannot move elegantly from one to another. So you have to manually standardize. And so what I would do is figure out what style you're most likely to use, and then go through and change all the titles to make them that system. There's a really good shortcut though. Like say, for instance, with the behavioral responses, if I needed to change this to a title class capitalization, which means that the R and the I and the M and so on all should be capital. If I do the control click or the right click, I can change it quickly from title case to sentence case. Right. So if I do title case, you can see now that all of the main words are capitalized. Weirdly, the B here is not capitalized, and I'm not sure, like that sort of flipped it for some reason. So I would need to go in and capitalize it. The other thing I can do though is if I do a control click and I go to title case. Oops, sorry. If I go to sentence case, notice here, so sentence case is the first word is capitalized, but the B needs to be as well, because that's the proper name, right? And so this is why Zotero can't elegantly move from one to the other, because it has no idea what a proper name is, right? So I would have to go in and I would have to manually do the B. But nonetheless, you can go through fairly quickly once you figure out what capitalization system your style uses, and just just sort it out, right? And just standardize it. So that's important. And again, it's probably useful to do that as you're entering stuff rather than at the end when your paper is due and you need to go through and fix it. But anyway, so that's the fourth thing. Okay, another thing you can do with Zotero while you're working with things in Zotero is, I don't know about you, but like the way that I take notes, or the way I used to take notes, is I'd create a Word document, I'd type in my notes, I'd save it, and then I would never find it again. What Zotero does is it allows you to create a notes file that's connected to that particular article or book or whatever. So let's say that I'm taking notes on the behavioral responses article. What I can do is I click on the parent metadata file, and then I click on this post-it note-y looking icon here, and I add a child file. Again, child. A child file here. So there's my notes. So here are some notes. And so what I've done is I've created a notes field that's connected to this particular article. Great thing here then is it's always going to be part of that article. But the other thing is, remember way back, I double clicked on the file here and it opened the file, right? If I go back to my library, I can double click on the notes and it creates this floating notes file. So then if I click back on the PDF, there's the PDF and there's the notes. And so now I can go back and forth. And so if I want to copy something here, I can copy it and then paste it. And so I can take notes much more effectively, just because I've got this sort of duo window. Great thing about this is that it actually puts it in quotation marks as well. So you can see here how my quote has open quote, close quote, and then the author, the title, and so on, or the author and the page and so on. And one of the great things about this then is it really helps you not plagiarize accidentally, right? Because if you're taking notes, one of the things that you end up doing is, sometimes you might quote something but not put it in quotation marks and lose track of it. And so, yeah, it really helps you sort out what counts as a quotation and what doesn't, so that when you're writing your paper, you'll be able to more effectively integrate material from the article. Okay. Go back here. So that's notes, right? And again, because it's embedded in the parent metadata structure, it's always going to be part of that article. So you're not going to lose it as much, or you're not going to lose it. All right. Sarah, Kristen, any questions so far?
Lots of questions.
Oh no, okay. Or good, I don't know.
So like right now what you were showing, they weren't sure if you were showing something that was already, in your Zotero library, if you were on the UH library website downloading something, if you could just kind of step back a little.
Oh, sure, yeah. So yeah, I was only in Zotero. at that point because I had already downloaded the article here. So I'm only working within Zotero now. And so it's, yeah, it's got various functions like changing the name of the PDF and adding notes and so on. Yeah, notice as well that there is no save button here. This is one of the things that's kind of different with Zotero, which is actually standard for databases, which is that it's always saving your stuff. And so you don't need to save notes or to save changes of one kind or another. It's an automatic saving as you go through the process. Yeah, so what I was doing, sorry, to step back again, is, yeah, I was within this particular parent metadata, or this particular entry, I was adding a note here by adding a child note, and then also doing a control click, which gave me the option. Oops, sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing there, to rename the file from the parent metadata file. So those are the main things. Okay.
Sorry.
And to add a note, you click on the parent metadata entry, and then you click on this yellow post-it note thing. I guess it's like one of those yellow legal pads or something like that. And then you say add child note. You can add more than one note too. So that, so in this case, I've got 2 notes that are added to that particular metadata file. Okay.
Okay. And then could you go over the process of adding parent data if the file in Zotero doesn't have one? Can you add parent data manually for some of the PDFs? How would you use the DOI feature?
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I'll drag over the Hawaiian grammar again. So this is an example where you drag over a PDF and Zotero can't automatically extract the information, right? So what I need then is I need a parent metadata level so that I can add the information. And the way you do that is you do a control click. Most solutions are going to be control clicks of something. So you do a control click and then you create parent item. Then if I do that, it gives me 2 options really. One is that I could enter the ISBN, which would just be that 10-digit or 13-digit number, or I can do manual entry, right? And if I do manual entry, then it just gives me the parent metadata empty files or empty fields over here. I would probably want to change the item type to book in this case, because I know it's a book, and then it gives me the fields that I need. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, it's really going to arise when you're moving in, things that don't conform to the articles and so on. Yeah. Okay.
Someone
Right.
had
We'll
also,
get to the backing up one. We'll get to the backing up one in a bit. Yeah.
okay. And then someone was, I'm trying to find the question again. Someone was asking about when you take a screenshot or to capture the information and saving it in Zotero.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can do that quickly too. Okay, so this is, I'll just do some random thing here, but if I do a screenshot, like I'll just do that area here, all that does is creates a file, right? And on the Mac, it's on the desktop. I think that's the case in Windows, though don't quote me on that. But so there's my screenshot, right? So because it's just a file, all I need to do is when I'm in Zotero, it's just like dragging that PDF over, except the one big difference is, so again, I need to be able to see the file and I need to be able to see Zotero, is that if I drag this over, well, depends what you want, right? Because if I do the horizontal line, it'll try and create a whole new reference. But if I want to just add it to, like, say I want to add it to the Hawaiian grammar entry, I just drag it over so that I'm hovering over the parent metadata entry, and then I let go, and then I've copied it over. So yeah, so with screenshots, it depends if you want the screenshot to exist as a separate entry, or you want it to just add it as information to an already existing entry. And that depends, because the big thing here is that you can't cite anything unless it's got a parent metadata level, right? So that if I just had Hawaiian grammar out here and I hadn't gone through the process of doing a parent metadata level, then I couldn't cite it in Word, right? And so, yeah, and you'll see, we'll do Word in a bit. That's kind of near the end of the presentation. Okay. Oh, so I don't know why it wouldn't appear. So what might be happening is you might be doing the wrong, control clicking on the wrong file. I did that earlier in this presentation. Like you see here how even though I clicked on Hawaiian grammar, it gives me this whole different thing. And what I had to do is I had to click on the actual file and then do my control click. And then it gave me the right the right pop-up menu. I'm not sure why. That seems to be a bit of a glitch there, because if I click on something, I should get the pop-up menu from the thing I clicked on, but that's not how that worked. So yeah. Okay. And I'll do the quotation thing quickly, and then we'll carry on to collection. So to open, like if I've got a PDF and the notes, what I need to do is I need to do two things. I need to double click on the notes field, and then I get this floating notes thing, and then also double click on the PDF. Oops. And then that creates, or that opens the PDF, right? So now I get these two windows. So then if I come along and I say, okay, I want this particular, well, that's a long sentence. If I want that particular sentence, I select it, I copy it, then I navigate to the notes field here. I'll hit return a few times, and then I paste. And because I'm pasting within the Zotero world, because Zotero has the PDF open, it knows that it's a quotation. So it puts the quotations and the reference. That doesn't put it into Word, right? That's not a citation yet. That's just me keeping track of my quotes. But then I could also then write something. This is important because blah, 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 right? So if you're ever doing an annotated bibliography, using notes is a really useful way of keeping track of what you're referencing. Okay.
I think we can go on for now.
Okay. I see that there's a question of the right notes or the right pane. Is that people aren't seeing the details, Sarah? Okay. What happens there, and this is confusing, is like you see if I'm in the if I'm at the edge here, or the between the right pane and the middle one, if I click on it, oops, sorry, if I make it too small, what it does is just goes away, right? And so to get it back again, what I need to do is click on this tiny little button here, or dot, and then it'll pop out again, and then I can move it back and forth. But the idea is that you might inadvertently have clicked on it in a way that made it collapse. And so if you click on it again, it'll come back again. Okay. All right. Let's go on. So let's do collections. So generally, like when you're adding stuff to Zotero, it puts it all into my library, which is the complete list of everything that you've got in Zotero. But what you can do is create these collections, which are like clusters or subsets of your library for particular purposes. Right? To create a library, you click on this little yellow folder up here, and I don't know, I'll just call it something. Call it whatever you want. You can make as many collections as you want, as far as I know. You can also move collections inside other collections. So you can see here how I've got Hawaiian history, and then I've got 4 collections connected to it, or I've got my test collections here. To move it, you drag it in, right? So that moved the September collection inside the test collection. Let me go back to my library here. Now, if I want to add something to this particular collection, what I do is I drag it into that collection. And you can see you can drag multiple ones. There are various ways of selecting things here. Like I can, yeah, I mean, so you can move whatever you want into a collection. Couple things of note here now. So I've got 4 things in the collection. Now, one of the things to complain about is that the metaphor here is all wrong. These are not folders, right? And I can show you that because if I click on let's say the education collection here, which is one that I had made a while ago, and then I move this one, say, into my September collection, you notice that it didn't move out of the education collection, right? And that's why they're not really folders, because I'm not moving things out of something to put them in something else. The better metaphor is really about, it's about playlists, right? I mean, it's kind of like, on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, where if you have one song, you can add it to a bunch of playlists, right? So you can have the morning playlist and the afternoon playlist and the driving playlist and the bus playlist and whatever else, and you can add the same song to as many playlists as you want. And that doesn't mean that to move it into one playlist you have to move it out of another playlist. It also doesn't mean that you have to have multiple copies of that item. Rather, you just have one copy in your library and then you add it to all of these playlists. So that's really what's happening with the collections, right? That that you're adding them to that list, you're not copying them or moving them. So that's why the folder metaphor really it can get confusing. And again, you can create as many collections as you want. Sometimes, like if you're writing a dissertation, people would maybe create one collection per chapter. They might create one collection per topic, however you want to do it. You can also, think of it also in terms of process. So, on the one hand, these are potentially bibliographies that are static at the end, but, you can do something like create a collection that is, stuff that I want to read or that I need to read. So you add the item to the collection. When you're done with the item, you just delete it from that collection. Let me show you that. So if I go to September here, and we'll do the transnational alliances here. So if I click on that and I hit the delete button, what I'm going to do is remove it from that collection. I am not deleting it from my library. So if I hit delete, it's going to say remove from collection. I hit OK, and then it's gone, right? But if I go to my library, where is it now? There it is, right? So it's still there, right? However, if I click on something, I'll do the Scottish if I hit delete here, because I'm in my library, if I hit delete, then it's gone, right? It's deleted from everything, from all of the collections that I've added it to and from my library. Now, it's not gone completely. You can just click on the trash button here, and there it shows up. So I've got like 30 days to get it out of there. But but ultimately, it will go away if I don't do something. So it works kind of like the recycle bin or the trash can on your computer. Okay. All right. So those are collections. By the way, this is a feature I don't use because I've got too much junk. But one potentially useful feature here is there's this thing called Unfiled Items. And what that gives you is a list of all of the items in your library that are not part of a particular collection. So that if you're someone who wants to file everything in at least one collection, this is quite useful because it gives you all the ones that you still need to deal with. Again, I don't use it, but that's a personal decision. All right. Then the last thing on this page, and then we'll take another break to see what if you have questions and stuff. But the last thing on this page is creating groups. Now, up to this point, you don't need to have set up a Zotero account, right? You can download the program for free. You can use it on your computer, not a problem. But what the groups do is they allow you to share a bibliography between people by using the Zotero server. And so everyone involved needs a Zotero account in order to share it, but it's great for group work. The way you create a group is you click on the brown button on the top left here, and you click on new group. It actually is going to take you to Zotero. I have to log in. We'll see if it remembers who I am. Sort of, it does. And then it lets me create a new group. I'm not going to create a new group. I don't use them so much, but it's fairly easy. You just name the group. I'll go to an existing group here. Yeah, so here, like hamsters is one that I created back before the squirrel time. So these are items that I've put into this particular group. There's only one member at this point, but if I click on members, oops, sorry, if I click Go back here. Sorry, if I go to the hamster thing, you can see I can manage the profile, I can manage members so that I could add people. I can give them different roles that they can only see it, they can change it, they can add to it, so on and so forth. Yeah, I won't go into groups so much, but just so that you know that it exists in case you want to create a group interaction with a bibliography. One of the biggest limitations of this is that you can only share the bibliographic information. It does not share the PDFs themselves, and that's for copyright reasons, probably more than anything, because you can add people to a group that maybe don't have legitimate access to the article. So yeah, so it only shares the bibliography, but nonetheless, potentially useful for group work and so on. But again, everyone has to have an account with Zotero. Okay. So with that, do people want to play with collections? How about that? Yeah, I'll give you 5 minutes to play with the collections and the notes and so on. See if you have any questions, and then I'll answer some of the questions that have come up.
Hey, Brian. Okay, a couple of questions so far are how do
Sure.
you adjust the style formatting?
Okay, we'll get to that. Yeah, because
okay.
that's a great question, because like at this point, we haven't done any style stuff in a way, right? We've changed the capitalization for the titles in anticipation of using a style, but we haven't actually done any style yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good question, but yeah, that's anticipating the page 4. Yeah.
Okay. And then if people are having issues dragging and adding things into Zotero, do you have any suggestions for that?
I mean, I'd have to see what they're doing, because it is very picky, right? In the sense that, yeah, like you need to see the file, plus you need to drag it into the list. I think that's one of the things that, I used to do wrong, is I would try and drag it into a collection and it wouldn't work. It has to be dropped onto the center panel. And then that other thing is whether, you have to wait so that you've got the horizontal line there, because that's what creates the new reference. Beyond that, I mean, there are ways of doing it. Like if you go to import, you can import items that way as well. It's a little clunkier, obviously, because you're doing file maintenance or whatever. But yeah, that's one way to import. Then it just asks you what you want. Oh no, I'm sorry, that just does the that's if you're moving. Oh no, I think you have to do the drag and drop. New item. Yeah, because that's gonna do. Yeah, I'm sorry, my apologies. I think you have to do the drag and drop. So you would just you'd have to just make sure that you can see it, you can drag it over and then put it into the horizontal. Okay. Any other questions?
Now, I think a lot of students are just anxious to see how to add references into Word.
Right,
So
yeah.
that's what we're getting a lot of questions about. So
yeah, and that's great, because you're anticipating where this is going. It's kind of like wanting to see the end of a horror movie, I guess, or something. I don't, maybe not a horror movie. Depends, up to you. Okay, well, let's do that, and then we can go back and answer other questions of stuff that we've already covered and things like that. So okay, so we'll go on to page 4, which is how you get stuff out of Zotero. All right, and I'm going to focus on Word, partly because I find Google Docs a little quirky for me, and I just haven't set it up to integrate it. It just means logging in, but anyway. So we've got our stuff in Zotero. Oh, let me go to my library. It doesn't really matter, but okay. So again, in Word, you need to have the Zotero icon. If it's not there, you can try and reestablish it. You might have to quit Word and start again, but this is a Word document. I've got the Zotero tab. So what I do is I type something, and then what I want to do is add edit citation. And here's where we get the citation styles, right? So the first thing it asks me is, what citation style do I want to use? If I need to add one, like for instance, if you're in the law, if you're taking law, the Blue Book Law Review is not part of the core installation for styles, but you just click Manage Styles. And then it will give you the get additional styles option here. So you can add and subtract and so on, right? But I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is add edit citation. I'll pick APA just for no good reason yet. And I hit OK. And then what I get is this red lozengey sort of interface where I have to type in a keyword to find my reference. So I'll type in Hobbes. Let's say I want this one, right? So there's your basic reference. Then if I click on this blue area here, I can then specify a prefix, suffix, and a page, right? So I can do page 607. I can also omit the author. And what this will do is it will, well, so some styles, and I'm not sure which ones, but some styles, if you mention the author's name in the sentence itself, then you're not supposed to put the author in the reference, right? So if I put, as Bejan says, blah, 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 then in the citation, I shouldn't repeat Bejan. It should just be year and title, or year and page number. That depends on your style, right? And so this is, again, where the style manual becomes important, because some styles you will, some styles you won't. Just check, right, whether you're supposed to include the author in the citation if you've mentioned the author in the sentence. If you want to omit, though, just click Omit Author, and then you hit return, hit return, hit return, and then there's the reference there. So notice the author's not there. Let me do one more. So add edit citation. I'll do Hobbes again. Do that one. And I'll just do pages 45 to 46. You can put whatever you want in here, right? I can put Roman numerals. I don't. And then if I want to put a prefix, I can say, see, for example, say, I don't even know if I'm allowed to do that in APA. But you can see there that I've got the prefix, I've got the pages, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, so that's one way of entering citations. The other one is if I do add edit citation, there's this tiny little down arrow here on the left side. And if I click on that, I can move to classic view. And what classic view gives you is basically, it's more like a grocery store approach to finding your reference. So you don't have to come up with a keyword. You can just say, oh, I'm doing stuff on Hobbes, and there's this one. And then you say page 7, there's omit author again. And so I don't have to come up with my keywords. I can just kind of point and say, okay, I want those ones. And I hit okay. Whoops. Now sorry, let me undo this because I put it in the wrong place. Sorry. I had to edit citation, classic view. I'm looking at Hobbes. There's that one, and then page 17. Okay, that's better. One more, and then I'll show you some other stuff here. So I go to classic view again. One thing you're able to do with classic is you're able to show multiple sources, so that if I want to reference 2 or 3 articles in the same citation, like here, I'll just do, yeah. What I do is I click on show on multiple sources here, and then it gives me this vertical column on the right. And then I can click here and then move it over and then put my page number. And then I can click here and I can move it over, and then I can put my page number, and I can put here, move it over, and then I'll do Roman numerals this time. Okay. You can put whatever you want. So I hit okay. And then there are the 3 citations, right? So that's how you do citations. Now, if there's a mistake, like if I realize, oh, it shouldn't be page 7, it should be page 10, don't just fix it. Like, don't click on this, delete the 7 and add the 10. Instead, what you do is you want to integrate Zotero into the fix. So you click on the citation, anywhere on the citation. Notice it selects the whole thing. And then I click on the add edit citation again. And then I get my interface. So I can click on here, and then I can change it to 10, and I hit return, and then it updates updates the Word document. And that's important to realize, is that there's this dynamic connection right now between Microsoft Word, this document, and my Zotero database. And so if I fix anything in my database, or if I change anything in my database, it's going to change it here as well. So if I realize, oh, it shouldn't be Cooper, it's, it should be spelled with a K or something like that. Well, what I would do is, let me find Cooper here. Right, so there's the Cooper one. I would go in here and I would change it to a K. I'm only doing that because it's sort of an obvious change, and so I'll be able to change it back again, right? So there's Cooper. So now when I go to Word, you can see that it hasn't changed. It doesn't automatically update. It takes a minute or two. If I'm impatient, what I can do is I can click on the refresh button here, and then it will go, and you can see now that it's updated it to Cooper. Okay, so and that's typically what you'll do is if you see any mistake in Word, go to Zotero and fix it, partly because then you're not going to confuse this document, but also in the future when you use that reference, it'll have been fixed. Okay, I'm going to change this back again just so I don't mess myself up. Okay, but that's how you enter citations. Relatively easy. Note again that you have to have Zotero running in the background or it's not going to work. So yeah, just make sure it's running. Now let's do the bibliography part. So I'm going to type the word bibliography. Here's another example, though, of where you have to read your style manual to figure out what to put there, because I think APA is works cited, MLA is bibliography. They're all variations. Look at your style manual to see what header you put there. But then what I do is I put the cursor where I want to insert the bibliography. Then I just click Add Edit Bibliography. You can see this took a matter of seconds. What it does is it goes through the document and finds all the things that I've referenced and then creates the bibliography from it. Notice that Cooper is still K. I think I need to do the refresh. There we go. So when I refresh, it refreshes the citation, but then it also refreshes the reference. And that's one of the great things. Like, so if I do another one here, so I'll add edit citation. Let's do classic view again. I'll just pick something. Right, so now I've added Kuykendall, and if I go down here, there's Kuykendall, right? So the bibliography dynamically updates. Again, not instantaneously sometimes, so sometimes you might want to do the refresh button. But that's how you do citations. Couple things here, though. Let's say that I realize that I don't want APA, what I want is MLA, so I need to change my citation style. What I do is I go to document preferences here, and it gives me this interface again where I can say, I want MLA. I hit OK here, and then what it's going to do is go through the document and update all the citations as well as update the bibliography. So in a matter of seconds, I've switched from one style to the other. The one big thing here is that it does not fix, if it needs to, it does not fix the title capitalization stuff, and that's really humbug, right? I mean, because yeah, like I would have to then move back to Zotero and fix all of those titles to the right capitalization. So it's really a pain to move from one system to another. But otherwise, yeah, it just pulls in the information from Zotero. Okay, a couple more quick things here, and then I'll go back to Zotero and talk a bit about the preferences and file management. One of the options I've got here is to unlink the citations. So right now there's this dynamic interaction between Word and Zotero, so that if I change Zotero, if I change the documents in Zotero, then the Word document will update as well. It is possible to imagine scenarios where you don't want that. Say, for instance, that I'm sending a paper to a journal to be published, or to hopefully to be published. They don't have my Zotero database, right? And I don't want them messing with the data. So it might be that I want to send them an unlinked version of my paper. And the way you do that is you just click unlink citation. And what that does is it severs the connection between Zotero and Word. And what that means is that if I change Zotero, it's not going to update Word. And also it means that if I add another citation into Word, it's not going to do all that automatic fixing of the bibliography and stuff. So very useful in very particular ways, but a couple things. I mean, one is generally don't do it unless you have to. And the other is if you do it on a copy. Don't do it on the original version, because once you've severed that connection, you can't get it back again. You'd have to go through manually and add all of your citations again. So if you find that you need to do it, do something, or to do it on a copy, not on your original. But it is potentially useful. Okay. By the way, yeah, I don't think you can make the DOI, at least automatically, you can make the DOI link active. You'd have to do that manually. I suspect. Yeah, it doesn't. I've never seen it do it automatically. Though Word does weird things automatically sometimes, so maybe at some point it would. But yeah, I don't think it does. Yeah, so that would probably have to be done manually, unfortunately. Okay. Let's see what else we have to do here. Oh yeah, so one other thing about bibliographies, which is, so in this case, I've got a bibliography that's generated from the text of my document. If, however, like say I wanted to send somebody just my bibliography or a list of books, not even a bibliography technically. What I do is I do that from Zotero, and the trick here is you find the collection that you want, and you do a control click or a right click, and one of the options here is create bibliography from collection. If I click on that, it gives me the option of creating a bibliography. I need to tell it what style I want. You know, I'll leave it at MLA. Why not? What kind of output, and then also what kind of output method. Where do I want to save it? If you save it as RTF, it saves it as basically a Word document, rich text format. Is what that stands for. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, which is going to save it to that magical realm called the clipboard. So now the next time I paste, I'll go to Word just out of convenience, but the next time I paste, there's the bibliography. Excuse me. Now, one thing about this is that there's no dynamic connection between this collection or this bibliography and the collection that I had referenced. Oh yeah, Douglas did all of that. Okay. And so if I change my bibliography, it's not going to update. This is just text. But I can email it to someone. I can, send it to whomever. So that is another way of getting a bibliography out. It just doesn't have that integration that you typically get with Zotero. All right, Sarah, what have I forgotten? Kristen, what?
Don't see any questions about. Oh yeah.
Go
So,
ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I don't see any question about citation, just that one question someone's waiting on about the storage. So
Okay, yeah. So let's do that. No, so yeah, take 5 minutes and play with Word, and see if you have any questions. And I'll go through the citation stuff while we're doing, or the storage stuff while we're doing that. Okay. Let me get rid of my notes here. So by the way that Zotero works, let me just show you that. So let me find it though. I can never find it. There we go. So on a Macintosh, and it's going to be different in Windows, but on a Macintosh, it's stored under the username. So there's Zotero. If I open that, we get various support files and so on. I think it's under storage. Yeah, so this is what the Zotero storage looks like, right? It's all just random. I don't know if it's random. I think it's random. And then if I open it, there's the PDF, right? But yeah, so you're not going to access the files that way. If you want to back up the files, one way to do it would be to find the Zotero folder and move it over. Or if you're backing up your whole computer, which I think I would recommend if possible, then Zotero would be backed up as well. Excuse me. If, however, you want to, so Zotero provides you with some amount of storage on the Zotero site. You need to have a Zotero account to do this. The way you set that up is you go to Zotero and go Preferences. Again, it could be under Edit or it could be under the Zotero menu. So here are various options. Obviously, we were doing the citation one here. The general one, I mean, look at what you want. I don't think I've really changed any of these ones. The sync one is the one that matters, because that's where you put in your data syncing information. So this is your account information for Zotero. Now, as I said, Zotero gives you, let's say, 30 megabytes or something of storage, which if all you're storing or all that you are backing up is your bibliographic information, that's fine. I mean, it's a huge amount of space. So unless you've got a massive bibliography, like thousands and thousands, it's not going to be a problem. Where it becomes a problem is if you want to synchronize your files as well, and that very quickly runs out of space. So there are a couple options here. One of them is, again, you can sign up for extra storage space on Zotero. They have different plans. They don't seem that expensive, but I don't really know how much online storage costs these days. But then you would just put that information in here. The other way, which is a more technical, picky way of doing it, or more technical way, is if you have access to a WebDAV server, then you can say, instead of synchronizing the files to Zotero, you want them synchronized to WebDAV. And then you could set up your WebDAV account here. And then what ends up happening is that the data gets synchronized to Zotero, but the files get synchronized to WebDAV. So that's a solution. Again, it's kind of technical, I guess. I don't know how common WebDAV folders are, or servers are. You can see here what I tried to do, which actually kind of worked, but kind of didn't, was use Lalima, because Lalima is a WebDAV server. But there were some glitches back when I was trying to do it. So I haven't got it working yet, though I haven't tried in the last little while. Yeah, so the answer is, yeah, you can manually copy things over. It's probably not recommended, only because then it confuses Zotero, I suppose. Well, it wouldn't though, because if you copied like the whole Zotero folder over to a backup and then moved it back again, that would work okay, I think. But yeah, but doing individual PDFs wouldn't be. Let's see what else. I think that's about it. Yeah, I mean, there's the preferences are generally well decided beforehand. So it's really, if you want a particular style, you can add it. If you want your default to be a particular style, just click on that, and then that becomes the style. You can change it, but that becomes the default one. And then again, the synchronizing. So are there anything you want me to show again, or any questions? I know it went quickly. And again, luckily it's recorded. Oh, actually, sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, I meant to show you this as well. If we go to the main library page and you click on the learning skills link here, we've put together some videos on Zotero. So I'm going to scroll down. These are actually about a year old now, which probably doesn't, they're all probably still relevant. But anyway, so these are whatever, 20 or so short videos. They're about a minute, 2 minutes each, on the things that we had been talking about. So adding things manually and so on and so forth. So if there are any particular questions, you could see if there's a tutorial here, or you can contact me as well. I'm happy to help. And actually, so that's a good question. So the question is, can you directly link your Google Drive folder onto Zotero Storage? I would do a search on that one. Let's see now. So Google Drive, because one of the good things about Zotero, it's a free program, and there's a fairly large community of users that answer each other's questions and so on. So it looks like what you would need, and this is a very quick read, obviously, but there's a Zotfile plugin. Zotero has plugins as well, and so that might be the solution there. But I would just Google it. Yeah, if there's a particular technical question like that, if I don't know the answer, then yeah, I would just Google it, and probably someone has talked about it. Good question though. Yeah, because a lot of people now are using Google Drive instead of their computer drives even. I should expand on. I mean, I think the hardest part, really, and that's because it's more interpretive, is how to get stuff into Zotero, right? And the idea really is to figure out where that information is available in the outside world, and then find the best way to enter the information. And that's why things like the ISBN and DOI, that the magic wand thing that I showed you, that's I mean, it's potentially useful, but typically not, because the ISBN and the DOI are easier to get if you're actually just downloading the articles. And so that's likely the better scenario, but it's possible to imagine scenarios where you need to use the ISBN and so on. And yeah, websites are tough. I showed you the best case scenario. But any questions, or if people want to play I'm happy to hang out. Oh, so yeah, the question is, do you need to use Zotero from the device that the Zotero program is installed on? And the answer is, well, yes and no. I mean, yes, it has to be installed on the computer you're using it on, but it's no, because you can install it on multiple computers. And this is one of the reasons for synchronizing your files to Zotero and to WebDAV, if you can get that working, because you can have multiple computers with the same address or with the same login information. So if you have a Zotero account and you have 3 different computers that you want to have your bibliographic information available on, just install Zotero on those 3 computers and then access your it'll synchronize the files and so on, so that you can then access them from all 3 files, which is a great it's a great feature. The downside of that is that for any particular computer, or at least any particular account on a computer, you can only have one Zotero account connected to it. So you can't flip between accounts in Zotero, which, I mean, I can imagine reasons why you'd want to, but typically you don't, right? Yeah.
So thank you everyone for your questions and taking a huge chunk of your day to be with us. I want to again give a big mahalo to Brian and Sarah from the UH Manoa Library. Otherwise, we hope you have a wonderful weekend, and this concludes our session.
Hey, thanks everyone.